All right, being 5:15, I'd like to call personnel or finance and personnel committee to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Judy, has the attendance been noted?
It has.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Changes?
Nope.
You get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second. Motion been made by John, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Move for approval for the February 7th meeting minutes.
Make that. Go ahead, Bob. I'll make that motion. Second.
Motion been made by Bob, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment? Seeing nobody from the public, we'll move on. Consider the compensation scale adjustment. Chad?
All right, so in front of you, everybody should have a copy of the 2023 new run starting wage schedule. Does anybody not have a copy? This is the same information I handed out last month. So I just got a bunch of things I'll kind of go through to kind of get us kicked off here. So first off in front of you is a copy of the 2023 wage schedule that was approved following our last major wage study. So that's the top page. That schedule was implemented as of January 2023. The second page is a 2024 draft proposal or example, actually, showing a 1.5% increase over 2023. So if you rip them apart and put them next to each other, for every number you see in the 2023 schedule, the difference is 1.5% to page 2. Does that make sense? It's just an example. So again, why are we talking about this? So I want to kind of revisit that. We use these schedules as your approved guidance for hiring new employees. The schedule really has nothing to do with wage increases for existing staff, existing employees. It's used to give us guidance for hiring new employees, or if an employee is promoted into a different position. So for example, if we have a street operator that's promoted into the street superintendent position, this is the schedule we use for a change of position. So again, really, I want to make the point that this is not for existing employees. This is just to give us guidance when we hire new employees to open positions. The problem in the past that this schedule wasn't touched for about 5 years or so. So they would do this schedule, they would publish it, but then it would sit stagnant for 5 years. So in year 4 or 5 of that timeline, the wages were substantially behind market. So the city actually had to do larger bumps at that time because it was sat stagnant for 4 or 5 years. So my recommendation when we look at this is to look at it on an annual basis and adjust the schedule in a smaller increment so we don't get too far behind. But yes, then every 5 years or so, we should do a more detailed comparison to see where we are at with this schedule compared to the market. If we're behind the market, then we adjust that to be competitive. But if we also find out that our smaller increments have gotten us past market rates, then that tells us that we have the opportunity to kind of hold tight a little bit and keep it stagnant for a couple of years to let the market catch up. So again, my recommendation is to slowly make the increments over the years so we don't get too far behind. Do the evaluation every 5 years to see where we're at compared to the rest of the market. So the last time we talked about this last month, I created a bunch of long-term forecasting for what this all meant. And in hindsight, it was probably way too confusing. It was too much information. So I took the opportunity to kind of simplify it. Now, so basically what we need to do is look at that 2024 schedule. And my recommendation is to adjust it so on an annual basis so we don't get too far behind. So the initial thought might be, well, if we give the employees a percentage increase per year, why don't we just match that? Doesn't that make sense if we just match it and keep the schedule the same? my recommendation would be not to match it to whatever the city gives to the general employees every year, and I'll explain why. So I've got an example here. In the yellow, we have a new employee hired as a street operator, plow driver. I gave him the name Snowby Gone Kenobi, just to give him a name. And in this scenario, he's got no experience. And if you look at your schedule, I highlighted in green, grade 10. This employee would start at grade 10 with no experience at the beginning at step 1, the green on your sheet. So again, we started him 2023. That correlates with, in 2023, the 46,844 for the starting wage. I also gave you the breakdown of what it would be for an hourly rate. Sometimes that's easier to kind of to look at. So this would be the annual salary and then the corresponding hourly rate of 22.52. So hypothetically, and just to make it simple, each year the city gives the general employees a 3% wage. And you can kind of see in 2024, in the employee's second year, if we give a 3% raise, the 46,844, 3% increase would be the 48,249. And again, if we do the same thing in 2025, if the city can do a 3% raise, then the corresponding rate would be the 49,697 over the previous year, and so on and so on and so on. Till an example, in 2023, this hypothetical employee at 3% every year would be at $57,612 or an hourly rate of $27.70 compared to his starting rate at $22.52. Does that make sense? So every year he got a 3% increase. Now, if we take the stance or hypothetically say, well, let's just change the schedule at 3% as well. So this line right here only represents the box in green on the sheet in front of you. Don't confuse this going across as going across on that 2023 or 2024 schedule. This is only grade 10, step 1. So in 2023, if you look at the green highlighted box, that corresponds grade 10, step 1 at 46,844. If hypothetically the city would increase that entire schedule by 3%, grade 10, step 1 would be 48,249. Hypothetically, if we increase it again at 3%, grade 10, step 1, the green box, in 2025 would be 49,697, and so forth and so forth and so forth, until 2023. If we adjusted that box in green 3% every year, grade 10, step 1 in 2030 would be 57,612. The challenge with that is that if we hire a new employee in 2023, no experience, just comes in, at the beginning, starts at step 1, that employee, because we've increased that box by 3% every year, that employee would start at an annual salary of $57,612, which is the exact same as an employee who's been here 8 years, because the percentages are the same, 3%, 3%. And my thing I want to point out is it fair to start an employee at year 1 at the same wage as someone who's been here 8 years? So the point I want to make is that more than likely we want to increase the schedule at a rate slightly lower than the annual rate of what we give the general employees. So in this scenario, I'm going to kind of just make it a simple change. Say, for example, we give the general employees every year a 3% increase, so that in 2020 or 2030, 8 years in, since Snowby One Kenobi would be at 57,612. If we increase that schedule, that hiring schedule, at a rate less than that, in this scenario, 1.5%, a new employee would be starting at $25 instead of matching what the existing employee who has 8 years of experience at $27.70. Does that make sense?
So you're saying a new employee with
previous experience of 8 years would be starting at the 25. Is that how I'm hearing this?
A new employee with no experience, let's start with that. A new employee with no experience would be starting at step 1.
Correct.
But an employee, and that's why there's a range. So you see, you know, in your 2023 schedule on grade 10, it starts at 46,844. It goes up to 59,965. So you see in a lot of advertisements, you'll see this job posted at this wage range based on experience. So the based on experience is what gives us the option of plugging them in to this range right here. But in my scenario, the point I want to make is that we need to come up with a number to change this wage schedule on an annual basis. And my point is, I don't think we want to match it to what the existing employees is, because a new employee with no experience, step 1, in 2030 would be making, if we kept them both at 3%, it would be the exact same as someone who started 8 years prior, because those percentages would match and change throughout time.
Oh, I understand.
I think it's a lot easier seeing it with the hourly wage versus the annual raise. Because when you ask somebody, how much do you make? They don't say, well, I make $50,000. He says, I make $20 an hour. So I think it's easier seeing it that way than it is with the annual.
So
And that was based on feedback at last month. That's why I included that, just to kind of make it a little bit easier to read.
If I'm correct, one is that 1.5% annual. That's a position. That's a position, step grade 10, step 1 position, whether it's custodian or plow, or it's not a name.
Correct. So
That 3% is more of a CPI. Is that what I'm?
for me, the 3% on this example is existing employees. The 1.5% you see in this example adjusts this schedule on an annual basis to kind of keep this somewhat current for all new employees coming in. So our existing employees we don't look at this anymore for existing employees, because as you guys know, when we do the budget, we say, hey, this year we can afford this percentage increase, and based on market, blah, 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 we're giving the employees in our 2025 budget a 3% increase. That's across the board. We don't look at this anymore for existing employees. This is only used to help me with new employees. Where do they fit in? What's our offer as they fit in the market? So, but this needs to change and be fluid over time, because if this stays stagnant for 5 years, then this gets really old in year 4 and 5, and then this is really behind market in year 4 and 5. So my point is, my recommendation is that we adjust this, but we can't adjust this too much that it creates this conflict with existing staff. That makes sense. I know it's kind of, there's a lot going on there, but
we have an ordinance on the books that we do a wage study every 5 years, correct?
the existing ordinance says we're supposed to do a wage study every 5 years. Yep.
So what if we do a wage study in 5 years and the wage study is lower than what we are doing every year?
Then we might have to do a little bit bigger bump. But my point is, I'd like to see.
What if
smaller
it's higher?
increments. If it's higher, then I think we would hold it. And that was my point. If we find out in 5 years, we do a wage study and we find that we are above market, that gives us the opportunity to kind of hold that for a couple of years and just keep it stagnant and let the market catch up to it. And then we readjust from there.
For new hires, right?
For
Yeah.
new hires,
Yeah.
just new hires. Yeah. That's the point I want to make is, don't think of this for any existing. This is all to help us with your approved schedule for new hires.
For new hires, you can't stay competitive. In the job market, you're not gonna get quality employees. So I think that's what it is.
And that's why I didn't want to keep this. I didn't want to keep this stagnant for 5 years, because we're going to get behind. And then all of a sudden we're going to do a wage study and we're going to say, oh, we got to jack it up 15% because we didn't do anything over the last 5 years.
mean, the last 5 years have been unprecedented. I mean, the wages were crazy the last 5 years. I'm hoping it levels off,
Agreed.
whatever.
Does that make more sense than last month about why we're doing this, what we're doing and the proposal? So I guess at this point in time, the proposal would be to adjust the 2023 schedule, increase it by 1.5%. Again, that doesn't affect any current employees. This just affects new employees. And adjust that by 1.5% to bump that up. And then this is the schedule we use for hiring new employees.
So any new people in 2024 would be,
Yes,
I get it.
The page 2 would be what I would use to put advertisements out, for open positions, and then make offers. This is the schedule that, based on you guys' approvals.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Make a motion to approve the pay schedule to a 1.5 increase for new hires.
I'll second.
Motion been made. Bob, seconded by Tim. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Monthly finance reports, Judy?
All right, so when it comes to our financial reports tonight, we are in the month of February. Thank you, Chad. So when I was looking at this today, I'm like, I forgot to change that to a 2, so that should say 2 months divided by 12, not 1. So in terms of a percentage, we should be at about 16.67 or 17%. And we are looking at expenditures at this time. And if we go down to this one, which has a little more detail, you can see that the insurance line item is high, and that's because we pay almost all of our insurance in the month of January, with exception of workers' comp and our fleet insurance. Those come later in the month, or those come quarterly, and then the other one comes in September. So most of that's why that one's higher than normal. And then you can see fire here because they have a fringe benefit that's paid out also in the beginning, kind of like an insurance, and that's also paid in January. Ambulance is quarterly, so that's why that's at 10%. But otherwise, everything is looking, you can see that maintenance is running high. Actually, it's come down a little bit this past month, so that's good. And you can see that some of our equipment must be coming in quicker than it has been in the past, because we're at about 57%. Also, we do have some that will sit in this category that we'll use designated funds for, because we do have equipment that we're waiting on from previous years. So I put the current budget within this document and then pull from previous years what we pay for those pieces of equipment. I think that's all I had to highlight on the expenditure side. Does anyone have any questions on any of the expenditures? So far, we're looking real good. If you look at the bottom, we're at 16.81, and 17 was what I indicated in a percentage. And we'll move on to the revenue side. And anything that I would find different from what we actually budgeted, I try to highlight as we go through the revenue side of our budget. But currently, there's no indication that we won't collect any of the revenues that we budgeted for in 2024. Actually, I find that forfeitures are up. And sometimes it looks higher than it is, because when our court system takes in New London and Wyowega court system takes in, we don't pay out to the jurisdictions because we have to pay out some of those fines to, the counties and Wyaliga. So it looks higher than it is until that payment is made to them. So that's why that looks higher. But otherwise, we're at a court highway, it's coming quarterly, so that's what that is. Our tax equivalent's gonna be actually up a little bit this year, compared to what we did budget. I got that estimate, while I was going through the audit. So that's good. We won't have, that gap in the revenue side that we had last year. Interest is coming in very nicely this year. I would anticipate at this point, although I don't have a crystal ball, that we would collect in full on the 125.5 that is budgeted. So nothing else that I see. Is that in there twice? I just noticed that. But nothing that I don't, again, I don't see any issues or concerns at this point as of February. Does anyone have any questions on any of the revenues? We'll be going through some revenues tonight. Actually, Mr. Fouché had asked that I talk about some of the revenues that flow in into our revenue side from the state of Wisconsin. So those are in the beginning, these numbers right here. So maybe I'll pull this back up as I talk about them, and then we can look at where they sit within the financials as I go through each of those items. That's the revenue side. And then assigned and unassigned fund balance, nothing has changed in here. I may see a change within this capital projects reserve as we went through the audit. We had some expenditures late in the year, so when I did the estimates on the capital reserve, those actually are gonna come down a little bit. We had some, like I said, some late expenditures in February that were booked into 2023, so we'll be able to drop some of the assigned fund balance sitting in here only because we paid them out. Not because there was anything that was correct about this. It was an estimate when I put it together. So I'm working through that with the auditors right now. And I'll be making a change to that, just so you know. But otherwise, nothing has changed. These are all the estimates we talked about in the last meeting. We'll be talking about this reserve today. So you can see at the end of 2023, our retirement reserve was at $740,000. I'll talk about that number tonight because I do have our retirement payouts on the list tonight of things to go through. So we'll take a look at that $740,000 and where it stands within those payouts. Otherwise, again, there's no change. I did add the memorial for the Robert Pulaski Estate for the police department on there. I think I talked about that last month also. And then any questions on any of those? Then we have the wheel tax, and so far we've collected 1 month, and this is so incorrect. Oh, Judy. So this is February 29th of 2024. And this is 1 month of actual, and these are anticipated expenditures in 2024. We have the North Water, the downtown projects, and engineering for House and Elk Road. So we have 133 set aside, plus 130 we'll collect. So we have plenty of dollars to cover the expenditures that are anticipated in 2023 using the wheel tax. Any questions on any of those? And then here is the report for payouts. So every year I present the payout to make so that you can see that there's adequate funding, and also the auditors, and when we go to bonding, appreciate that the city of New London actually has an established designated fund balance or assigned fund balance for the payout of these dollars, because there are a lot of communities that do not actually put money aside and they cash fund these as people retire. And sometimes that can have a real strain on the budget when you're budgeting from year to all of a sudden have to pay someone for either their vacation or sick leave payout. And as you can see, some of those are $40,000, $60,000. So must have been 15 years ago, Missy and I went through and we, on the first page here, you can see all of the assumptions that we made and how we came up with the numbers that we put within the schedule. And then you can see that again, told or indicated $740,000. And if you look at the line for 2024, and I just want to open mine up here so I can take a look at it. Sorry. That we are at, if everyone retired who could who is currently eligible for a payout were to retire today, the city's commitment would be $333,370. We are at $470,000 within that fund. And you can, and after 2024, once we add in the dollars that we're gonna put aside this year for, let me make that a little bigger, Chad.
Let me grab it.
Got it. Thank you. Down here, you can see by the end of 24, we'll have 785,000. And if you go out to year 2030, we're at $827,000. And what happens is that number includes everybody assuming, so by the time we get to 2030, nobody would have retired. It's a cumulative number, saying that all of the people in 2024 would just shift to 25, 26, 27. So we are cash funded within this fund up to year 2030. Should have no concerns about making those payouts as we go through the years. The first report here includes all of the employees that are eligible for payout. And then I separated them by the police department here. And then the rest of the employees are on this page here. The police department has a little bit different payout than the rest of the employees. So if you look at it numerically and look at the payouts for the police department versus the other full-time employees who are eligible, their dollar amount is about a third of the total. And like I said, theirs is just calculated differently than ours. They get a little bit more in their sick leave, assuming that they have it available when they retire. Anyone have any questions on that?
How many sick leave days do you get a year?
There's one sick leave day accumulated a month. So 12 sick days a year. This is really common in the government sector.
But there's only so many you can make.
960 is what the payout is. But then if you look at the police department, they have a little bit different of a payout than we do.
960 hours.
Hours,
And
right?
160 days.
Correct.
Hours.
960 hours, yeah.
I would hope so.
Hours. I apologize. Yeah, that's a big difference. Thank you. Yes, so the max, but I mean, so there are people who have way more than that accumulated within their banks. And we try to, that's what it's there for. So if something happens to somebody, they're able to take that time off of work and not have to worry that they don't have a job when they come back. So and again, it is very common amongst state, municipality. I think the states even, they take theirs and use it for health insurance, I believe is what they do at the state level. And theirs is much more generous than ours is also. So I'm sure you have this at the city of Appleton. Again, real common amongst municipalities. It also gives, and the purpose for it too is that you have to remember our police department is retiring at 20 years. So sometimes they're 55 years old, and it allows them to make that decision whether they can leave their position, at that time, because it allows for them. Usually is what the gap is in health insurance, because we pay nothing towards those health insurance dollars, and you're talking $1,500 a month. So even when you're talking $40,000, it doesn't take long when you have to pay out your own health insurance to go through that kind of money. Any other questions on the sick leave? All right, then, again, I bring this sometime in the, first quarter, I try to bring it in and show, what this looks like every single year. Just so we can compare what's been put aside to what the dollars look like within, the schedule. Make sure that we have enough money put aside. My understanding is one of the next GASBs are going to be having all communities put these dollar amounts on their books.
And explain GASB.
Hmm?
Explain GASB.
It's a government accounting standards board, who decides what our accounting records are supposed to look like. And they come along with, new standards for government. Last year it was leases, so we had to go through every single lease. So when I'm doing the audit on top of that, anytime a GASB, has a new statement is what they call it, then the city has to go through and comply with those new statements. And we have to put those, so all of the footnotes are getting longer and longer every year. And last year it was leases. This year we're working on, computer software. And what does that look like? And does it mean that it's an asset, and how much money is it worth, and all of these kind of things. This one will be, is the city able to pay their obligation to those individuals that will retire? And do they have enough money put aside? And I can guarantee you there's a lot of communities that don't. But now it will force them within their financial statements to show, first of all, what this looks like, and then second of all, show the funds that they've set aside in order to meet their obligation. So that's coming up, I think next year. So we already have that one. When they said that, I was like, oh, we're already done with that one. That's perfect. So Missy's actually working on the computer one this year. And she helped me with the lease obligations last year, because every single lease that the city had, we had to scan in and send, and then the auditors go through it and decide if it's material to the financial statements or not, and whether it needs to be included. So. All right, any other questions on the sick leave or how that works? All right, then at the last meeting, Mr. Fouché talked about personal property exemption that was currently passed at the state level that affects us. And it was under Act 12. So what I thought I would do is go through, and he said, oh, it'd be interesting to talk about all of the things that pass through our state government and the revenue that passes into the city. What does that dollar amount look like, and why is it the way that it is? So I went through each of the line items in my revenue, and a lot of that state funding is right on the top of my revenue account numbers. So I just kind of went through there. And then I went on to the League of Wisconsin Municipality website and pulled what the explanation of each of these line items are, and why the state of Wisconsin did what they did. Just remember, we have no control over what the state of Wisconsin does and decides to do. And what they're doing a lot of times is deciding that, so let's start with state aid for tax exempt computers. This was a personal property tax. So they've been kind of picking at personal property for a long time. And we'll go through a couple of them here. So first is state aid for tax exempt computers. So the program reimburses municipalities for lost revenues caused by the creation of the personal property exemption for computers. So normally a business would put computers on their personal property form that they give to Adam, and then Adam decides what does that property bill look like based on what the state tells him that property tax bill. So he has guidance also from the state, and what is that property tax? Well, the state decided to take some pressure off small business and exempt the computer aids for municipalities. When they did that, they backfilled the revenue to the city of Newland, all municipalities that were collecting personal property tax for tax exempt computers. They, at the time, and I can't remember what year, July 2018, when they exempted these, they took the number that we were collecting in 2018 and they said, from now on, that's the number you get. It's not unlike what's gonna happen today with personal property. So computers come off personal property, we're gonna backfill it. So within our budget, that the city of New London budget amount for this is 19,947.47. So that's in our current 2024 budget. So that's one of the things the state of Wisconsin pays us for, because they chose to take them off the personal property and then pay communities. Now, remember, we're small. So you talk about a city of Milwaukee, a city of Madison. So if we're getting 19,947, you can imagine when they decided we're not gonna make businesses pay, they're like, "Ugh, you know, how are we gonna fit, you know, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get this revenue?" So then they send the dollars to municipalities instead of them collecting from the businesses. Here's the second one, personal property exemption aid. So this is for machineries, tools, patterns. Again, this is related to personal property. So again, when that form is filled out for Adam, you had a particular item or area within that form that said things were, you know, machinery, tools, or patterns. So the state said, no longer gonna tax the businesses on those items. We're gonna backfill. And for the city of New London, that's $12,739.24. That's within our 2024 budget. Then we go down to video service provider aid. So as you know, our cable fund has an assigned fund balance, and we utilize video service provider aid to fund our cable, and we did some things within this this chamber with those dollars. And the state decided that they were going to reduce the amount of dollars that came to communities for the video service provider aid. So instead of just reducing the communities for that dollar amount, they decided they would pay, and it's about a quarter of what that dollar amount looked like. So we used to get 4 payments from, what is the company? Charter, used to be Charter, I don't know.
Spectrum.
There you go. And so we still get 4 payments, but they're less, and then the state fills the difference. So that's $18,158.53. That goes into that assigned fund balance to pay only for cable type items. And then another one the state pays us for. Shared revenue, I didn't put a lot in here. We talked about shared revenue. We've all been to meetings on shared revenue. We know that they've kept it flat for many years, and that went up this year. Our amount of dollars that we get in shared revenue, 2024, $2,430,555. We are very dependent here in the city of New London on shared revenue. Always have been. I don't know that that's ever going to change. There is a utility portion within the shared revenue category that is paid at the same time as shared revenue. And that is for the infrastructure we have with
ATC
there you go, ATC. So they have a site
substation.
And it's based on the value within that substation, and the state has a formula, and they pay us for that substation. But as time goes on, the substation will depreciate in value, although it went up at one point because they put a fence around the substation, and then we actually saw more dollars. So currently that utility portion of our shared revenue is $82,857. So that's part of our shared revenue. Expenditure restraint, we talk about this all the time, gotta stay under a certain dollar, but here's the eligibility for expenditure restraint, okay? The municipality only property tax rate must be at least 5 mils, we're bigger than that, okay? And then they talk about this 12-month period, so we have the inflation factor equals the average annual percentage change in the US customer price index. We have to stay under that. Used to be that I would guess and look and I'd be on there every day, like, what is this number gonna look like? So we could stay under it. And they changed that, so now we get to do this consumer price index from September to August. It used to be from October to September. So we're all sitting down doing our budget, hoping that we have that number right, because we don't wanna go over, otherwise we do adjustments before, and after, at, you know, at the very end, making sure that we get under this cap. And cause that's what it's worth to us, $106,236. So anytime, and you guys have heard me talk to the library as we went through that project, and they wanted to increase their budget. And I say to, you know, and we talked about that, like going to referendum and other things, and I said, just remember, we go over expenditure restraint, you not only have to ask for the dollars that you were looking at for your budget, but we need $106,000 too. Unless we're gonna skip the 106,000 for a year. But we're gonna need that too, because if you go over the expenditure restraint, you gotta meet that gap somehow. So I do talk about this sometimes when people are looking at increasing their budgets, a very large dollar amount. You know, something different about expenditure restraint this year, we get a pass. Because the shared revenue went up by such a large dollar amount, they are expecting general fund budgets to go up by a very large dollar amount, and utilize those dollars. So when I fill out the expenditure restraint, which is due here within the next couple weeks, I will be filling it out for the first time. It's not that I don't care, because that's not the you know, what I want to say, but we didn't have to worry about losing our $160,000, because this is exactly what we're gonna get next year. So what the state did was said, okay, if you qualified for the expenditure restraint the year before, you qualify for it in 2025. We use this number today for 2 years later. So when I apply for that expenditure restraint, like I said, I have to apply for it. If you don't apply for it, you don't get it either. So if I don't get my, you know, that form in on time, they have no mercy. So you apply for that aid, and then this one is an automatic. But what it does do, and why I have to get the information in, is it starts me at a different floor. So instead of being at the floor of last year, if I don't get it in this year, my floor will be 2 years ago, and we'll never make it going into 2025. So I have to make sure I get those dollars amount, it'll increase that floor, so that we won't have to worry so much going into 2025, but things will be tighter, to be honest with you, and things will look different. I did some things in between to change, you know, what things look like, so it gives you a little breathing room in there. But because it was an opportunity, and you have to take those opportunities when they knock on your door. But yeah, we'll be again looking at expenditure restraint, talking about that going into the 2025 budget process. And where is it at? What does it look like? And we'll definitely be looking at inflation factors, and I'll be more keen on that next year, knowing that we need to abide by these expenditure restraints. Then we have a fire insurance tax from the state. So we receive money from the state from our fire dues program. And these revenues are collected by insurance companies and sent into the state of Wisconsin. And we receive funding here at for our fire department. And the state and local fire, and it's meant to be used for state and local fire prevention and fire protection programs. Our fire department does qualify for the 2% fire dues, and we also do receive from the jurisdictions of which we serve. And we do go through an audit, of which I participated in at the end of last year. To make sure that we're putting our money where it's supposed to go, that it's being spent where it was supposed to go. So it did go quite well, and we did pass, because if you don't pass, you don't get the money. So we went through, I bet you we were in there a couple of hours with the representatives of the state of Wisconsin and their auditors, and met with them and went through what things look like and where they sit in our county book. So that's a fire insurance tax from the state.
Judy, does $20,000 also include the portions from Muckwa and the other ones?
It
or is
does
that
not.
just the state? So
That's
the state.
just the city's portion.
Got
I did not include the other. portion. I just can't off the top of my head tell you. It's so new that I don't have that one sitting in my head right now.
Township sees that 2% too, don't they?
They do in the.
And then they're supposed to transfer it to the
And
one.
they do, because I had to show the state where it came into our county. So, but for a long time, that was not happening.
Yeah.
So, they put their foot down and they came in and said, no, we have to make sure we see where things are going. So we got that all taken care of.
Yeah, our last fire services agreement with the townships, we cleaned that up. To make sure it was crystal clear that, yep, that has to come to us, otherwise they and us wouldn't be in compliance with what the state regs are.
All right, then we've got what is called general transportation aids. So this is for roads, basically. So it's not just for roads, it's for roads, it's for the street department maintaining roads, sidewalks. But that is what the general transportation aids are meant for. Enabled local governments to receive state aid payments to offset the cost of county and municipal road construction, maintenance, and traffic operations. So it is not only the road itself, but the individuals within our organization, the employees that work on them and maintain them. So these are aid payments that are fuel taxes and vehicle registration fees. So that's where the state of Wisconsin gets those dollars from. They distribute them to communities based on on a formula, and the distribution of these funds is a 6-year cost average. So the more you spend, the more you get. So if you have a down year, it can kind of lag you for a while, and then if you have up years, they'll get you going for a while. So this is important that you spend money in the road area in order to maintain those dollars. And we currently receive $632,183. So also a very large revenue source for the city of New London to help with that portion of our budget. All of this that I put up here is located on the League of Wisconsin Municipalities website. So if there's anything you want to take a look at, if you want to go look at what other communities are getting or make comparisons, all of that information is either available on the League website or on the state of Wisconsin website. And they do have some really nice, in fact, maybe one of the things I should do sometime is show you the state of Wisconsin website and how to operate that website. The League's pretty easy. Just go on, you can search and it'll pop things up. But the state of Wisconsin also has a website that you can pick just about anything you want, any city, any town, any whatever, and it'll pop up how much debt they have and all kinds of information on that state website. So that is another great area if you want to do some more research on any of these. The one I did not put up here, so I'm going through my packet for tonight and I'm thinking, Act 12, and I didn't even put it on here, but I think part of why is because it's all new yet. So all of how personal property is going to change going into 2025, our assessor is the person who will do all of the calculation of what personal property is going to look like. There's some exemptions and all kinds of things. Actually, this was like 5 pages long. And it talks about personal property and what's going to happen with personal property, how all of that is going to be calculated. So really, I have no guidance, and even the League didn't have much of anything on their website about what this looks like because it's so new. I know Adam's trying to get through border review and other things before he starts tackling all of this stuff, because he does have till, later fall to get his arms wrapped around what it looks like. But and plus, he just doesn't have as much work in the personal property area, because there are a few properties that will still get something, and I don't know what that tax bill is going to look like. And again, he's still working on what that's gonna look like with the guidance of the state. He has to know, the state's the one who guides him in what that bill is gonna look like. He just has to go through that process with the state of Wisconsin. Usually it's a lot of phone calls, or even we have regional representatives over in Green Bay that he'll probably give a call to and work together with other communities. It's a learning time for assessors too, and how that's gonna work. But one of the things I thought I should say is currently in Outagamie County, the city of New London receives $82,241 in personal property tax. And in Wapaka, $88,652. Depending on how many parcels are not exempt from this, but I don't think there's many, then the state will fill the difference. So, you're talking $170,000, $180,000 that we're gonna add to this list of money that the state will be sending us to backfill changes that they've made. And then send it to the city and all the other communities, the same, for the dollars that they've decided to make in a different way or distribute in a different way. And again, we don't have any control over how that looks or what happens at the state level. We just know that at this particular time, we receive these aids, and at this specific, particular time, we receive these aids, and then how that works through our budget and how we're able to pay our bills as we move forward. So we appreciate that when they take a look at these changes, that they are sending us what these dollar amounts were previously within our budget, because as you can see, there's a lot of them. And if you started to have to fill that with tax dollars, you would see communities' tax rates going up, especially when you're talking $170,000 for personal property tax pretty quickly. So we appreciate that they keep in mind that they are large portions of our budget process.
Did they talk about if they're gonna keep that stagnant, or are they gonna keep the
Yes, this
adjusted?
again will be stagnant, yes.
one
So
time
whatever,
$600?
yep, whatever we received last year, so it should be real close to this minus the exemptions that we receive moving forward. I suppose that's the easiest way for them to administer the program moving forward. I just wouldn't want to be one of those people who normally gets expenditures, right? And then didn't get it last year, and now they're gonna skip it to 2025, and I know it was something that there was a lot of discussion about moving forward, but currently that's what they're saying. If you did not qualify, you don't get it in 25, and if you did, you get it in 25. So fortunately, we are in the boat that we did qualify, so we will be seeing those dollars in 2025 also.
So to answer John's question, by getting rid of personal property tax, it's not gonna affect us in any way because we're still gonna get the money from the state.
You are correct.
Right up until the state stops paying.
I personally, being a business owner, pay personal property tax, and I think it was a real hindrance. I think people in, businesses in the community, can you imagine the state coming into your home and you have to evaluate all of your property in your home and pay a tax on it every year? That's what they were doing to businesses. So hopefully that'll free up capital for those businesses to reinvest in the community.
It is, it has been, that's what I'm trying to say. So this has been on the table at the state for a very long time when it comes to small business. So they've been chipping away at it. So here was tax exempt computers, and then they went to exempt aid. So they've been looking at personal property tax for a long time. It really is it was a very cumbersome process to go through personal property. But again, when we're looking at $170,000 for the city of New London, you got the city of Milwaukee and the city of Madison who's saying, okay, if you're gonna choose to alleviate some of the pressure for the businesses, then how are we gonna make up the difference? I don't think there was a lot of people who didn't agree that the personal property tax needed to take a different direction, or it needed to be, visited and looked at. But again, then obviously the first thing I would say too is, that's $170,000 in our community. and you don't want to make it up on the tax rate side, so you don't want to be pushing that on the real estate side to make it up. So what is it going to look like moving forward? So we appreciate that state understands or listens to, you know, the communities as they're talking about that and are able to make up the difference to the communities moving forward. I think that's it when it comes to the reports. So then, I have my short, director's report, because in the month of March, I spend most of my time getting ready for the audit, of which I had, last week for 2 days, and one the day before we did online, and then the next day we did in person. So that went well. And I just have a number of schedules, including, you know, fixed assets that I have to add, anything that we added during the year. That's always a big job. The wastewater treatment plant also, I have to do all their fixed assets and add it to a schedule. And then I have to calculate depreciation for them, depreciation for the city. So it's just a lot of information that we need to gather. Special assessments have to be put together, and April and Missy take care of a lot of that, and then I usually review them. I review them prior to them coming in. So it's just a really busy time. In March, we finished out our tax collection too. No, that was in February. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong month. So I completed information for the meeting tonight, took a look at all of those revenue sources. I began to file away 2022. Remember, I always talk, I work in 3 years, so 2022 starting to go away, or just in 23, 24, and 20. Now we look forward into 2025. Had some HR and payroll discussions and questions. I had some civic board training. I had a governance conference I attended. And a segment board meeting. But the lion's share of my time in March is getting ready for that audit. And now I move forward into a lot of compliance reporting to the state of Wisconsin. So I get audited, and then once our books are in order, and we get all of those adjustments done that we take a look at together, then I move forward in expenditure restraint. I have a state report I have to finish. And so there's just a lot of compliance reporting to the state over the next couple months. And then summer comes.
All right, thank you, Judy. Any questions, comments?
I have one question for Judy. I don't know, maybe this is for capital projects, but what do we put away each year for sidewalks?
So as part of our capital projects
I think
budget,
it's 25,000.
yes. Mhm.
25,000 for
25,000,
sidewalks and
but-
25,000 for streets.
Right, but we have a couple years on there now. Yep, so there's $50,000 this year for our sidewalks.
And that's for spot repairs, so we'll have a contractor come in and just, we got
Spot stuff,
zones
yeah.
set up in the city, and we'll do inspection of that zone, and then the spot repairs of those zones. So Robert was so busy with the downtown project, he didn't have time to concentrate in that last year, so like Judy said, carried that over, now we're gonna do.
Do we use that all up every year?
Well, I think that was the only year we didn't, because we had that huge project going on downtown. Now, remember too, that's for maintenance of sidewalks. We go into a road, we usually do the sidewalk.
That's what I'm talking about, maintenance of sidewalks, not doing a whole street, just
Correct.
spot.
Yeah.
And I know he did do the one up by Lincoln School. I mentioned that was really bad on the north side. And he did do that. Those sidewalks are done.
Mhm.
Because we got a lot of bad sidewalks in town.
Yep,
And
so
that's why I was
hopefully
wondering-
they'll be able to hit that hard this year.
Right. That's why I was wondering if we used up, and I know this is for capital projects, but it's
That's okay.
finance, so I guess it's probably the same part. So I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't look into spending, or maybe because Robert's so busy with the downtown, maybe it's something to look at for next year. Of course, every year we're looking at big projects, so.
Yep, he's gonna try to hit it hard this year, because we have an inspection done. Like I said, we got the city set up in zones, so we'll do an inspection of that zone. Luke will go out or whatever, and then you'll see all this green, it's a green dot program, so you see all these green dots everywhere that sidewalk needs to be replaced, and then we put a bid out for that and go from there.
Because there's some of them that are heaved up so bad that, I mean, you gotta be careful when you're walking.
Yep.
And I mean, it's all over, not just in one area, it's all the whole city. So I'm wondering if that isn't something that we should maybe look into a little bit more, because I've had a few people complaining about the sidewalk.
Be great to do more, but then if it come from somewhere else, then,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah,
where,
I realize.
where do we steal it from to do that? So.
Yeah, but I know we used to allocate, every year we used to stick some money into the sidewalk fund. So I'm just thinking that we shouldn't look into maybe putting some more in there if we can squeeze it someplace.
I think the
That's
biggest
my-
thing is make sure we're just staying on track to keep up on it, not that we go 4 or 5 years, not
Right.
do
Yeah.
anything.
Right.
We want to keep up on that program.
All right, that was all I had.
And I know Robert does have that on his radar because he's talked about it more than once.
Yep.
About, I have 50,000 this year, yes.
Yeah, like I said, if I have somebody complain to me, I bring it up, and Robert's been real good about taking care of it, so I guess it's,
Mhm.
but I'm just thinking that maybe we should look a little more into sidewalk repairing. That's all I got.
I was just wondering, has the library and museum board been able to keep up with the maintenance of the new building? Because they're going
I haven't seen much.
Pretty minimal. They have a new-
Heating,
What's that?
heating,
That's about it.
yeah, I think that's all I've seen come through so far.
I mean, they
So-
turned off the water and stuff like that, so it's pretty minimal. I mean, we're not cleaning, we're not vacuuming and things like that right now. They're doing some tours yet to try to, increase interest and stuff, but yeah, it's been pretty minimal.
I don't know what committee it would be appropriate to bring it up at, but is there a way we can get an update on the progress of that project?
I'm guessing this committee would probably make the most sense.
Yeah, sure. I will talk to them.
We can invite Ann for that.
Thank you.
Without anything else, in a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
Second.
Motion made by Bob, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.